WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. Each and every week we come to you on Tuesdays at 2:30 with replays at 7 p.m. on Star Communications Channel 16, WCLN Radio as well, simulcast. Today we're talking about a critically important subject to you, and we're talking with people that know something about that subject, and the subject is homelessness. And we have with us Lynn, Director of Social Services in Sampson County. Rhonda Mathis. Rhonda, you've got a different title, I think, from the last time you were on here. What is your title now?
Yes, sir. I am the Adult and Family Services Program Manager now.
Like I said. Okay. And I'm going to move to Becky. Becky, I always get the names crossed up, so I'm going to put it straight up. I wrote it down. Becky, spell Vann. I'm always calling you Becky, Vann, spell, and I get that mixed up. I want to thank you for being back. You've become somewhat of a regular. You helped us out with a Christmas or New Year's spot, and you did a great job with that. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you.
Eddie Barnes, you are the outreach pastor at the Clinton Community Church, located right beside my old alma mater, Sampson Community College, where I worked and retired for years. Thank you for being with us. This is a critical moment in our society, and this is a very important subject. So I want everybody to kind of get a feel for who is on this panel, and not only your strategic knowledge, but your willingness to step up and be part of it. Homelessness, as we know it, continues to be something that we see. It's a bit on all of our windows. We see it on news channels. By definition, one of the many definitions out there legally says you're homeless if you have no accommodations that you are legally entitled to live in. The accommodation needs to be available for you to live in, and it must be reasonable for you to carry on living in it. It not only means you, it includes you or anybody else that normally live with you. And I'm going to start with you, Lynn. When we look at definition of homelessness, it's more than somebody on a street corner with a cup in their hand. Is that safe to say?
Yes, it is. As you said, if someone doesn't own a home that they have the rights to, that in essence equals homelessness. I'm sure there's probably a lot more out there than what we see today on our streets, because they have family members and other resources that they can tack into, but they just don't have anything on their own that's theirs, that they know each day, each night, I have a place of my own.
I'm going to ask each one of you this question, so be thinking about it. Do you feel like we have a homeless issue in North Carolina, and is there a homeless issue in the eastern part of North Carolina?
Yes, I believe we do. Sampson County doesn't have the homeless population that some of our larger counties have in North Carolina, but we definitely, through our agency, have opportunities to see homeless individuals that come in and seek our help. Those are the obvious ones. There, as you said, there's those people that just don't have a place of their own, that are transitioning from one home to another, that we never encounter, but I feel confident that I would say it's an issue.
Rhonda, I want you to share your response to that same question, and also I want you to kind of touch on some of the kinds of protocols that social services has as a governmental entity as it relates to this subject we're talking about, homelessness.
Yes, well, as Lynn said, yes, I do think it is an issue in Sampson County. Again, not as much as in larger cities that we see, but within the past several years, especially with mental health and substance abuse problems rising, we have seen a rise in cases of homelessness in the county. And as far as DSS is concerned, with some of our policies, we have to always remember as social workers that every family has strengths. And so even though they may meet that legal definition, they do not have a home of their own. There are instances where we can't necessarily always get involved or become guardians or to provide housing for them, because we are trying to work with them to utilize their family resources and their community supports.
Becky, both you and Eddie, I had a conversation separately with each one of you over the past few months, and which kind of piqued and grew my attention to this subject. I want to just kind of field that question to you and let you share with us the experience you've had as somebody that is well known in the community for doing things that has only, I can only say has been led by God, because we probably wouldn't get there if some of the challenges you faced and people that showed up at your door at Tim's Gifts.
Well, thank you, JW. And it's not a problem. I thought 15 years ago when we began Tim's Gift, that was not on my list of things that I thought we would encounter. And I tried to find a statistic before we came here today for Sampson County on homelessness, and I couldn't find the figures. But for North Carolina, the last I found was 2019, and on one night in January, there were 9,314 homeless people documented in shelters. And it has become more urgent in the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years for us, because it's like they are coming out. Mm-hmm. And it is here in our city and our county, and they have nowhere to go. They are sleeping in places that we would be surprised, on streets, abandoned houses, and they are coming. They come and ask for help. They will bring bags when they come in, and we're very careful with that, but they just say, will you fill our bag with food that we can, they like the tops that you can pop off. But we're aware of the homelessness, and it's a concern because there's nowhere in Sampson County or Clinton City to send anyone. Mm-hmm. We refer them to the Beatitudes in Dunn. That's the closest shelter we have. But it's a concern, and it makes it difficult because we know what the Bible tells us to do, to help our fellow man. They need help.
Eddie, I'm sitting here thinking, I want to kind of segue to you as outreach pastor at Community Church here in Clinton. You not only, kind of like Becky, you not only talked to me about it, but you've been doing some things in the background to try to create a response to what you have seen. Kind of help us understand from your perspective and vision what you're seeing happening.
I think more than just some of the things that has already been said, I think some of the homeless issue that we don't see is the people who are sleeping on couches. Me and you talked a little bit about that before. I've known plenty of people that some people wouldn't say they're homeless, but they really are. They're sleeping on someone's couch until they're told that they can't anymore. They don't have a permanent residence. In my mind is homelessness. I don't have a permanent residence. I have to go with wherever I go. And I think a lot of people have seen it. And I think a lot of churches are starting to see it more and more, because if you start really getting to know your congregation, you probably have 1 or 2 people at least that are sleeping on someone's couches. I know several of them in our churches that we try to help, and we try to get their feet on solid ground and everything like that. And there's no definitive answer. If that person was kicked out right now, if I got a phone call by one of them right now going, hey, they told me I can't sleep here tonight, my only answer is to try to call other people and go, hey, can you help them tonight? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then when we get people that, and I know me and Miss Becky, we overlap with this a lot. When I get people that show up to the church that go, hey, I've got $40. Can you give me the other 40 to stay at a hotel tonight? It's one of those things that when we start talking as a larger group, and I've been blessed enough to connect with some of the local pastors, and they see the same thing. The thing is when we start to see the problem and try to react to the problem, there becomes all the different kinds of red tape, stuff that y'all have to run into personally. And then inside the us trying to help people, sometimes the red tape we run into of if we do have someone show up and they're homeless, and I know Miss Becky, you've probably run into this. How long do I help them before I'm enabling them, or I'm causing more harm than help by trying to help them? And then where does that balance fall? And I think it's one of those things that with most things we have to look at a holistic approach. I'm not just trying to find them a place to sleep. I'm not just trying to find them a place that they can rent, because what if they can't pay it? It's how do I help lift them out of the situation entirely, instead of just going, here's some food, here's some, just like back with the Bible, if I see someone naked and hungry, going, be warm and be fed. Yeah. Now it's how do I help them go, hey, here's food and here's somewhere to stay for a little bit, but how do I elevate you out of that? So.
And I want to segue back to you guys for about a minute here. Is this idea of what Eddie talked about, is how do we help people? When you get calls, and Rhonda, you pointed out some of the protocols and so forth, do you have the latitude to react in an immediate way? Do you feel comfortable in staying within your protocols that if it's an extremely cold night and it's 18 degrees out and somebody says, well, guess what? And I'm going to throw this back to you, Rhonda, because guess what? I've got a young child. Mm-hmm. What does that say to you?
Yes, and of course, every situation is different. But yes, there are things in immediate situations where we at DSS can help. It's interesting what you were just mentioning, because one of the things we look at when we're going to help them in those immediate situations is, what is your plan going forward? That makes a big determination on whether or not we can provide services. Is we can't just give you a hotel room again and again and again. We need to know, who are you going to reach out to? What is your plan after that? Yeah.
Before we put somebody in a hotel room, we spend a lot of time talking to them about where have you been staying, what is your plan, because there may be options other than a hotel room. We go into, do you have family out of state? Is there somewhere else that you have other relatives? You may not have a home in Sampson County, but do you have contacts in other places? Because our goal is, as Eddie said, not to just give them a place to stay that night, but to get them out of that situation.
Right. And in the situation you mentioned with a child with 17-degree temperatures, of course, that's something immediately we could help with, and that would actually rise to the level of one of our protective services cases. But, with adults, if we encounter that exact same situation, we can give them the hotel room, but then when we try to lift them out of that situation, they have to be willing to accept that help. And that is something we are also increasingly finding some difficulties in with the rise in mental health and substance abuse issues. If they're not ready, they're not going to accept help.
When we come back from this break, I want to explore this whole conversation about response to identification of what is homeless. I want to also add to our conversation today, when it seems to be impossible to help someone that needs help. And I had some folks mention to me that they had reached out and people said, ain't nothing wrong, leave me alone, go away. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about homeless right here in this county, in this area. Stay tuned, call a friend, we'll be back in a moment.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. J.W. Simmons, your host. Pleased to be talking with you today and talking to a panel of folks here that is very knowledgeable on the subject we're talking about. Lynn Fields, Director of Social Services. And of course, Rhonda Matthews. Rhonda, thank you for being back. Also, Social Services. You got a lot of titles over there. I'm not going to get into all of them, but you've been on this show before. Becky Vann, that's been here, and with Tim's Gift, and I can oftentimes use Becky's name, and everybody goes, "Yeah, I know her." So you're well known, and of course, Eddie, you've been with Clinton Community Church. You've been through a lot of things in your life. You've seen a lot of stuff, and it's not from up there down here. It's from down there up there. So you've got a depth of perspective that I think is critically important. Yeah. As we talk about homelessness. And I want to just toss this out for anybody. As we talk about this, and this was brought to my attention by some law enforcement people. They said there's just certain people out there, you're not going to move them unless you arrest them, or you're not going to get them help because they tell you there's nothing wrong with them. Let's talk about that psychological aspect of homelessness. Anybody?
I know for us, and we had a couple of different scenarios with that, where when people get comfortable, even in a unfavorable situation, to get them to change is like pulling teeth. There's no other way to put it. There was a gentleman one time showed up and that he wanted help. He walked from Roseboro to the church. And we were like, hey, we'll do this, we'll do that. And all he wanted us to do was drive him back to Roseboro to a different place that he could have easily walked to. But it was something about getting us to help him, that he wanted people to give him something. You know what I'm saying? And you have to, one, as a spiritual entity, that means you get the privilege of, I'm sorry guys, we get the privilege of, there has to come discernment. What is it? Am I helping? Am I enabling? Am I opening doors for people, or am I just continuing to put lumber on the fire? And you can find that out, sometimes by just simple questions. Hopefully, sometimes you feel it by the Holy Spirit. When the limit is. But people, no matter what, people get comfortable with what we would view as uncomfortable situations, and change to them, even for the better, is scary, because at that point in time, they have a fear of failure. If they've already been homeless, if you're already at the bottom, to be given a chance to make the right steps, to us looks like a heaven sent thing. But in reality to them, it's scary, because what if I do get these things and then I just fail again? What if I just completely collapse back in on myself? And that's the mental health stuff that we have to handle, because I give you a plan. We get you set up with a job. Maybe we do all these things. But if your heart and your mind isn't healthy enough to believe that you can actually sustain these things, you'll become self-destructive. And there are people that they can't help it. And we have to care about them spiritually, mentally, and then the physical side too. Sort of like the Pavlov's, kind of thing. So,
And I think one of the things that I'm hearing you say here is that we're really in that world that just almost everything now is being identified in some way as individually psychological or social psychological, and these impacts, are we prepared, not only with faith-based organizations, but with governmental entities, are we prepared to handle that? A lot of the behavioral health folks just seem to be inundated, and yet social services is being looked at, well, I'm going there so you can take care of everything. It's not a one-size-fits-all, is it?
No, it's not. And as adults, they have a right to choose. We're very limited in the resources that we have. There's certain things we can do when someone comes in and they indicate they're homeless. As I said earlier, we'll gather as much information as we can and lay out a plan of what we're able to do. We can't put someone in a hotel room for an unlimited amount of time. We can put them very temporarily if we know what's the next step. But outside of that, we then have to talk about family members outside of the county, or other family members, or homeless shelters outside of the county. But at the point that they say, no, I refuse to do any of the things you offer, our hands are tied, unless, and Rhonda can speak more to this, there are children in the home, small children, because we're obligated by law to ensure the safety of children. But adults are very different. If they are competent adults, they have the right to choose to live in those situations, even as uncomfortable as they are.
What does competency mean, Rhonda, when we think about it from a social services perspective? And then I'm going to kind of toss it out. What does that mean from all of you guys?
So one of the things that I was told when I first moved over to adult family services is that there is a difference in just choosing to make bad decisions and not being able to make good decisions. So the difference there is that they have the capability to make decisions and survive on their own. Can they make financial decisions? Can they make decisions about where they live, where they sleep? Can they access emergency services, as opposed to just making bad decisions? That does not make someone incompetent. So that would be the difference there, I would say.
What would you guys, how would you respond to this question? I saw somebody that was sleeping beside a post in a rural area, may not necessarily be the city of Clinton, but there was nobody else around, and they were obviously sleeping beside this post. I could see that they were homeless. And who's the first person you call? And I'm saying this to the folks that's listening and watching today. If you had that situation and there was somebody there, who would you call first? Would it be law enforcement? Would it be faith-based organizations? Would it be social services? Where do you think that's false? Does folks know who to call? some people may say I called a local fire department. I don't know, but you know, there's that situation that the reality is becoming more and more apparent. And again, you don't have to, Becky, you don't have to reach or go to the big cities to see the tents on the street, but it's becoming more and more apparent what I'm hearing you guys say.
Well, JW, I think there are many people living right here in this place we call home that don't believe it's a problem. But if they do, they don't want to acknowledge it. And we're all guilty of that at times when we don't know how to solve it. So it's much easier to just give them a cup of water or a bag of groceries and say sorry. And one thing that we do, we have to be very careful there, but we call the law enforcement. We have a good relationship with our police chief and our sheriff. And in the last month, 4 or 5 times, I've had to call them and ask for help because we had homeless people and we needed direction. And what we always do, we always pray with them. That's something that we have that we started back in 2007 when we opened, 2008. When somebody comes in, if you show them some dignity, even though they are not dressed or they may have a stench, and they may not look like we do. If you show them some concern and care, which is what we all try to do, yes, we're limited what we can do, but we can show them some respect. And I think that's what they're looking. They're looking a place they can go. We even had one 2 weeks ago, two that came in and sat down. We were having lunch when they came in. They sat down with us and we had extra food and they ate with us. And then we filled their bags and we said, no, we can't do the motel. But we gave them things they needed. But our law enforcement are very aware of it and they're very helpful. But I think it's time we can talk till we're blue in the face. But until we're willing to take it the bull by the horns and say we have a problem where we live with people that are homeless and we come together, all the community, all the people. And I know it's not a popular topic. We'd rather not talk about it. We'd love to see something done about it, but it's like somebody else. But I believe there's a way when we come together, and I'm grateful for you today giving us this opportunity because it is a problem in Sampson County and Clinton City.
And guys, one of the things that Becky said, I think is right on point, is we have to identify something. I mean, I know you guys probably deal with alcoholics and everything else. You got to identify and say, I have a problem before you can fix it. And I think I hear Becky saying that. We got to say we got a problem here, so we need to fix it. And I want to try to, for the next couple of segments, we got about a minute here before we're going to go to break again, but I want to try to address that from each one of your perspectives. How do we approach this? What kind of resources do we need? You know, and Eddie, maybe the resources are already there. We just got to get them together and organize it. And you know, from the perspective of social services, you've got a giant organization called Department of Health and Human Services in Raleigh that you can go to their web pages and there's all kinds of things that'll steer you anywhere you want to go. And it's worded nice, you know what I'm saying? But the reality is, and I think you nailed it, Lynn, is this idea that budgets are limited. I mean, you don't have the resources. And Rhonda, my heart's going out to you because I know some of the things you faced when you were dealing with abuse for children and those kinds of things. I cannot imagine, Lynn, somebody being sleeping at night and not being able to deal with the problem. So I want to look at those kind of issues and kind of follow maybe the second half of the show with the idea of how do we address this from your perspective, and then each one of you just be totally honest and say, well, here's where a roadblock's going to be. Or maybe it's something, Eddie, that you've tried and it didn't necessarily work. And it might be that one of these folks or some of our listeners will, you know, email us and say, or reach out to you and say, well, I saw the show and we're willing to do this. And that's the thing. And the consistency of it is something else I'd kind of like to get into and address it. So I'm not going to put you on the spot with a commentary. We got like about 30 seconds here before we go to break. But I just think this is kind of where I'm seeing the picture being painted. And after talking to, I think, all of you individually, that's what I'm hearing from you is that, yes, we do have a problem.
Okay.
Number two, we can address it. And here's some ways we can address it. But I want to talk about it from the sense of how do we collectively do this? Not just you and your organization that you work with, but collectively as listeners and folks that watch this show. Sound good?
Yes.
So we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment, and I'm going to take a quick moment here to remind folks how to reach us as well. And certainly we want to get a way they can reach you before we leave. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us. The first half of the show, we've got into a subject that is real meaty, that requires maybe a semester here, but we're going to try to get it in as much as we can. We want you to reach us by just sending us an email to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. We'll be back in a moment to continue this discussion and what do we do about the message.
Star Communications strives to provide you with the best video services. That's why we invested in cutting-edge video equipment to bring you new features such as Cloud DVR, Restart TV, local video on demand, advanced parental controls, and higher quality reception. We hope you will love the new Star TV.
Honey, do we pay our bill?
What bill?
The Star Communications bill.
No worries, honey. With Star's paperless billing and automatic draft system, I get a notification sent right to my phone. There's no need to be bothered with those paper statements, and our bill is paid on time every month.
Well, that's easy and convenient.
It sure is, honey.
Honey?
Yes, dear.
The bake.
Oh, right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. We're talking about a subject that's near and dear to you, and sometimes you might not know it, you might see it, and you might not recognize it. You might not want to see it, but it's called homeless, and it's called homelessness right here in this area. And we're talking about some folks that know what's going on with this, and we're talking with Lynn Fields, Director of Social Services, Rhonda Matthews, also with Social Services, Becky Spell Vann, with Tim's Gift, and Eddie Barnes with Community Church Pastoral Outreach. I want to start this segment with a quote article I read on homeless people in rural America struggle for help. And the quote is just simple. It's something we've alluded to here. It says, we have hidden homeless because so many people that live in rural areas are not visible to the general public. And it says, in policy solutions and for homelessness and property, people tend to look away. And it also says that I think rural homelessness is often totally overlooked. And that's kind of what we come to in our discussion today, that it is there, but it appears that it's kind of a commonality to overlook it, or should I say steer around it. It's like somebody throws a mattress out beside the road. We don't necessarily load it up in our truck and carry it we just kind of steer around it and thinking somebody's going to get it. So how do we look at these last two segments and say, okay, I got 4 people here that I'm looking at talking to, and folks at home, and if you're in your car list and wherever, I'm talking to some people that can bring things together to do something about it. Where do we start? And in your opinion, how do we bring that together? And many of you have already started some things. So kind of help us from whoever wants to take it from there. I'm not going to call on anybody.
Okay. Well, at DSS, we do things that everybody hears about: child protective services, adult protective services. Sometimes we can't offer services if they don't meet eligibility requirements, or maybe they don't have a disability. But to combat that, what we also do is have a center at the agency called the Hub Resource Center. So if the government can't help and our services stop there, we have other ways there. We can have our social workers meeting with the person, talking to them about family, reaching out to our other community partners, like Clinton Community Church and Miss Becky, to try to offer assistance, because you're right, we are a very rural county, and getting people into shelters sometimes, they're none locally, and then they have very strict requirements. Sometimes they're full, or you have to have a negative drug test, or you have to be able to work 40 hours a week to stay there. So really for our county, the biggest help that we have is these community partners that we're able to reach through our Hub Resource Center.
Would you want somebody is there a specific number, or call the general number for the county social services line? And is there a homeless department, or how did folks get to somebody at social services? And either one or both of y'all.
You can call the main number to DSS. It's 592-7131. And then you can just ask to speak to someone in the hub.
Okay. And that should get somebody there.
Absolutely.
And Lynn's thinking, if they don't, oh my God, they know me, they're going to get me in the community and go out and get somebody.
That we have a strong group in that hub. If they call and they ask for the hub, they will get them connected to something.
And what I'm going to do is ask Mitchell and Jason that really do the technical stuff for this show to put these numbers at the bottom of the screen so folks can not call me or email me and try to find a number. They'll have it right there in front of them. So we'll get that number for you. So Becky, I'm going to kind of segue to you. I saw Rhonda kind of look toward you and Eddie. So you might be on that alternate list.
Well, JW, I know Eddie probably feels the same way. Actually, he was one of mine in 7th grade and at the morning station. And
yes, ma'am.
We're just so proud of what you do for our community. And we look at our Christian community because we're very blessed to live here. But I can tell you, our hands are tied because there is no one to call. I mean, when they get to us, when they are sent to us by a church or by word of mouth that they hear something and they come in, there's no one. We do not have a reference in our county or city to call unless we call for, like if we ask an escort to take them to the Beatitudes House in Dunn, we get support from our police and our county Sheriff's Department. So we're grateful for that, but they've got their hands full. I think that's part of the problem. Everybody's got their hands full, and we've all got regulations to go by. We have more flexibility, and we do offer them like the things that we can, but like right now we have a family of 4 staying in a storage building, no heat, no running water, and the father rides his bicycle there once a week to get the medical supplies they need and food. And that's not something where do you go with that? You know, we're just trying to furnish the things they need. They needed pillows and sheets and things. And someone came in and donated, and they came back and they were so excited to get it. And I thought, I can't imagine if I didn't have a warm home and running water to go to tonight. So I feel like our hands are tied. And we can't point fingers because that doesn't solve the problem. We've got to come together as a community with leadership that will truly face this. And we need prayer, but we need action.
Eddie, you stepped up some time ago and lassoed some folks, pulled some people together. Yeah. Kind of tell us your experience in trying to really make a headway here.
So, I've been blessed to get to know several of the pastors of this area. We have really great pastors and pastoral people here in this county and the city. And we started to talk about this exact subject, about possible properties that could be donated or bought by people. And the red tape that we run into from our end, and I know specifically from my end, being part of a church, is if we were able to come together, who owns that property? Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but if 5 or 6 churches get together and we all throw money at it and go, hey, we're going to buy a property, who owns it?
Right. Yeah.
Whose property is that? And then number 2, who regulates it?
Who mans it?
Yeah, because we could all volunteer, but the catch is let's say us 4 are from 4 different churches and different entities. What if she had someone Monday show up and she put them in that house or that building that we had? But Tuesday I get somebody and I have no idea that someone's already now in that house.
It's got to be regulated.
Yeah, it's got to be regulated, and it's got to be something that we can all discuss and approve. And that's where we're in need of more people like Miss Becky, where parachurch ministries come into play, to where we can filter things like that. Because that's the biggest thing. And that's what when we started putting pen to paper and discussing these things, that's some of the ideas that we had to start discussing is we would need to build a whole separate entity to somehow get this to be a thriving thing where everyone could get on board. Because to be honest, and it's the things that we run into, good or bad, is it comes down to, I have a board that overlooks the job that I run. And if I go, hey, we're going to start giving church X amount of money, my board's going, why are we giving another church, money, and vice versa? Yeah. And it's one of those things that I think when we start trying to have to solve this problem, it has to start looking in a completely different manner than we just send them to Clinton Community or First Baptist or Miss Becky. We find or start to do our best to develop and create entities that is solely for that. Miss Becky, you've evolved into some of that in those areas, but we need to start looking and going, these are specific issues that we need to start actually creating entities as a community to control and to help that, because there are people willing to help, people that are probably watching and listening going, well, I'd give money if y'all had a building, I'd give money for that building. We have to start looking into how do we create this entity that isn't solely ran by just one thing, but manned and ran by many things.
Because we're limited.
Yeah, maybe this idea of a GoFundMe page instead of this GoFundMe my homeless page or something of that nature. So I'm not sure, but Lynn, go ahead.
As we're talking, a light bulb just went off. If no one entity has the answers by itself, but if we could come together as a community and form a nonprofit that has a board of directors that leads and guides and set forth those policies, then that would give us open up opportunities possibly for grants, talking about fundings and things like that. And it's not easy, but if we never do anything that's hard, we're never going to do anything great, or we're never going to do anything different. And I do think the only way we're going to address this is to address it together as a community, not just the religious organizations, but the DSSs, across the county to come together. And I think a nonprofit would
because
help
this
that.
segues county lines. I mean, I'm sure, folks in Bladen County listen to this show, and Pender County and Duplin County and all kinds of areas. So it's not just one county. I mean, and plus, Eddie, one of the things we talked about is these folks tend to move back and forth. They migrate where it's the softest spot, so to speak. So when we look at these kinds of things and we're talking about it, we're also, again, talking to this larger population that the show reaches. If you have ideas on that, remember, the numbers of all of these folks on this discussion panel today is going to be on the screen. Just pick up the phone and call them and say, just give them your name if you want to. If you don't, but don't give them your name, but give them your idea, give them what your input is, and try to move forward with some kind of structural capacity. As we move forward with this last segment, I want to try to deal with this issue and kind of how do you say it, tighten the bolts down a little bit with this, and maybe where do you go from here, and what would you project would be the next step if a step is taken? And I'm not aware of an organization in the county that's saying that's what we do. We deal with homeless. I got a house and we're putting them in here. We're doing that. I'm not aware of that, and I feel like if it was there, that social services or somebody would do it. So when we come back and kind of get in this last segment, just remember, anywhere you think we need to go or something we need to get out, this is the last segment coming up, and we want to try to get it in there. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. I want to encourage you to call a friend. Stay tuned. We're talking about a critical issue for our community, for this part of the state, for this country. And it's a homeless issue that continues to be observable, recognized, and identified, but the ability to change it becomes limited. We'll be back in a moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of light. Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home, and we strive to provide the best communications services. Star is committed to improving communications to all our service areas because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. Star Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. We're coming up on the last segment of the show today. We're talking with folks from social services, Lynn Fields. We're talking also with Rhonda Matthews. We're talking with Becky Spell Vann. Eddie, I got it right that time, and Eddie Barnes. All of these folks is discussing a subject today called homelessness and how to help and how to construct. For our viewers and listeners, it's critically important. I want to kind of toss, and I'm not getting any kind of promotional exchange out of this, but a fellow by the name of Stephen Ide wrote a book called Homelessness in America. He's been on a number of national channels, and I'm going to have the guys to kind of push this out there. But he addresses it in terms that fit a lot of the things we're talking about, but he talks about it in the sense of homelessness being an elusive concept. He talks about homelessness as this compassion, con or pro. Some people say negative, some people, positive about it. And he talks about homelessness as a social integration process. That, at some point in time, it's almost like it's being part of the norm of our society, is rather something we need to fix. We've talked a little bit about that, Eddie, off air as well. And this whole idea of police work versus social work, I found that segment a little bit interesting as well. So, I encourage people to do some background reading, to call you guys and say, help me understand this, and not accept your own notion. So in this last segment, I want to just toss it back to y'all and say, okay, where do we go from here? We've talked about things that need to be done. Eddie's tried some things. We've looked at other things, and we've talked about the protocol regulations of social services. Let's just discuss this idea. Where do we go from here? We put this out here now, and it's something that we're not going to take back. It's out there. So let's say, what do we hope will happen as a result of our conversation today?
One thing I would say is I would hope as we walk away that at least for these entities here, when we encounter someone that's homeless and we feel like we've done everything we can do, not to stop until at least we've called each other to see, did I miss anything? I heard Miss Becky say when she deals with them, there's no one else to call, but let's make sure there's been a call to the hub or to DSS to see, is there absolutely another step that could be taken if they show up at our door first, to reach out to Miss Becky, to say to Eddie, we've done as much as we can do. Is there anything else you can offer, to make sure we're not assuming, but to continue to connect with each other?
I'm listening to her, and what I'm seeing it before me? I'm seeing the executive component of the board of homelessness help in Sampson County. I'm just saying. Rhonda, you get me? It's like when Lynn was talking, I just looked over here and I looked back over here and I'm thinking, you got to start somewhere. And she just said, at least we can contact each other. And you guys can reach back and forth. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I would be so excited to just know that after this show today, that some folks call and something could move forward as a collective. Because Eddie, it's like not just churches. It's not just government. It's literally everybody. Rhonda,
it takes
help us understand.
It's one thing I say to clients and my staff repeatedly is it takes a village. So you are absolutely right. And I would love to be a part of that opportunity if that were to ever happen. But it takes us staying in constant communication with one another and sharing the knowledge that we have to put things like this in place. And it is needed in our community.
And I would remind folks that's listening, and of course us sitting here as well, Lynn Fields I've known for a long time, and she's sitting there with the weight of social services on her shoulders, and she's stepping up and saying, we need to come together and do something. Lynn, I just want to give you 2 thumbs up sitting here to just say you're willing to step up. That's huge, Becky. You get that.
Well, it is. We're a team, and that's what Jesus taught. He didn't start out with hundreds. He had a small group, but he gave them a command to go and tell. And if we don't go and tell, because many people don't see this problem, and I can understand why it's not a well-accepted topic, JW, because it's dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
There's danger involved.
And you've been part of that.
Yes. And it's very personal, so you don't share it, but there are dangers, and it is easy to let fear override, so we don't step up and trust God. Where we need to start is to put Him at the head of the list and say, God, we need help in our county and our city and surrounding counties and cities, because we have now people all over the state are coming here to Clinton to get help at Tim's Gift, because they've heard that there's a place that they can come, and churches. But sometimes it's easier not to open your doors or not to get involved. You'd just rather, I will give you some money, but I don't want to get my hands dirty. And it's a topic that's going to need a lot of prayer, a lot of preparation, if we're going to do it in a way that's pleasing to Him and that will really help people.
Is there a sense that if we stay quiet and we don't talk about it a whole lot, that it'll eventually go away?
It's not going away.
No,
It's like not talking about having a stroke, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just not going to talk about the symptoms I have until, I'm laying on the floor and shaking and nothing's going well. I mean, nothing ignored is going to be solved. That's a fact of the matter. And with what Miss Becky was saying just then about connecting and us working together and praying and keeping God first, I think some of the times we become the Pharisees and the Sadducees that we hate to see, and the homeless people are the leopards now.
That's right.
It's a plague that we want to ignore because they don't look pretty and they don't fit the mold or the mentality of things. But also the danger that comes into play.
That's right.
I was sharing during the break about helping some people, and I remember the first person me and my wife helped, we didn't know more than the next stranger, and supposedly one of our friends knew him. And we went to him and said, hey, is this guy safe? Like, if we go to sleep tonight, if we let him sleep on our couch and we go to sleep tonight, am I going to wake up tomorrow? You know what I mean? Yeah. And this guy vouched for him. He's like, yeah, he's a good guy. Years later, come to find out he didn't know him either. So, I was like, dude, why did you tell me he was the same dude? He could have, took me and my wife out into the sleep. But, God willing, that's not what happened. And we helped develop him. The guy ended up joining the military and living well now and everything.
But they don't all turn out that way.
No, they don't. No, and you can't always celebrate the stories, because sometimes you pour your life into it and you feel like you threw your pearls to the swine. The catch is if you don't throw any pearls at all, you don't know who's swine and who's not.
That's right.
And I think the biggest thing is it comes down to human decency. Anyone that watches this that's a Christian, I believe at some point in time, our heart should break for people that are in need. And if it doesn't, then we may need to have a heart check. Yeah. But then it comes down to human decency is can you truly close your eyes to hurt and harm around you? Because at that point in time, that'd be like watching a house be on fire and hearing people scream for help and you just walking by. That's not my problem, and I'm just not going to pay attention. Right. Yeah. None of that's good, and none of that helps build a community that you want to live in, because you wouldn't want to be treated that way. So I just encourage, when it comes to this, anyone that's listening, we're not asking for people to build a house tomorrow. We're asking people to search their hearts and souls and go, do I know resources? Do I know something that they don't know?
Yeah.
Do I have a heart to even just plug in some form or fashion? Because quite frankly, as informed as all four of us may be, I'm not the smartest person. Miss Becky's willing to say she's not the smartest person. Someone may have a much better idea than any of what we're saying. And quite frankly, there might be someone that was watched and they've had this call in their life for a long time. They've ignored it out of fear. Sometimes the best thing to do is step out in faith and go, you know what? I'm going to have faith that people are going to ultimately be good, no matter what. I'm going to have faith that God's going to be there for me when I step out. And that faith is going to be a bridge to greater things than you can imagine. And sometimes it's fulfilled and sometimes it's not, but it's willing to be faith. So,
Debbie, I read something this morning that on any given night in America, that 21,900 people are homeless. And we want to think that we're not in that mainstream, but we've got some numbers in there.
Yeah, when you break the demographics down and look at it from numbers only, we're smaller, but then again, we got less numbers too. So it all kind of adds up. I want to kind of start and give each one of you 20, 30 seconds. We're going to come to a close here right quick. And start with you, Lynn. Just go around, everybody, give you about 20 seconds for closing comments, whatever you think.
I would just encourage anyone that if you know someone that's homeless and they need help, to reach out to DSS, 910-592-7131. Ask for the hub. But also, as Miss Becky and Eddie said, search your hearts and see, are there resources you have, whether it's money, whether it's time, ideas, and let us know if you have ideas, resources that could help. And
what I would like to just say is sort of to piggyback off of what Ms. Lynn said, if you are one of those watching that is having reservations because of time or money or, the risk involved, as a person who's been a social worker for 8 years, we see risk and time's taken up all those for a lot. But it's very worthwhile. You will have heartache and it won't always work. But every once in a while, one story will happen that will mean something to you, and it makes everything you've done before that completely worthwhile. So just consider that if you are watching.
Thank you very much. 20 seconds.
JW, I'd just like to say it is an honor and it's very humbling to be a part of this also. And when someone sits in front of me and shares their story and they are homeless, instead of casting stones, I have so many times I've sat there and said, that could have been me. Because I had the loving family and the resources and the support, and a lot of people have not had that.
About 15 seconds.
I've slept on couches. Some of it was hard-headedness and self-inflicted, but when people give you a chance and believe in you, you can get past that. And I think sometimes it's not about fulfilling the idea of putting them in a bed. It's fulfilling the desire to believe in someone beyond what their circumstances show you.
Awesome.
And we have to be able to do that.
I want to thank each and every one of you guys for being here today and talking about this subject. It's not only timely, critically important, and hopefully the message is out there. And again, we're going to post those telephone contact numbers for the folks listening and watching, that they can reach out to you personally. They can give you an idea, and certainly we'll try to put email addresses and that kind of thing. So again, thank you for being with us, and I look forward to having any of you on later, and we'll talk about the executive committee, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again each week on Tuesdays. We look forward to seeing you again next week with a new show. And as always, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.